But please understand, just because we've misunderstood this word of submission, it doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that's what's really important, is because what they've done is they basically said, well, that was a cultural passage. That was based on the time and the era, but because things have changed, we can dismiss that passage. But the problem with that is, throughout this passage and other passages as well, Paul keeps repeatedly grounding his teaching in what happened in the garden with Adam and Eve, with Ish and Isha. Meaning it's bigger than culture. It's what God intended, what God designed for marriage. And if we reject this whole idea of submission, what we're doing is, even though it's well intended, we're rejecting God's counsel, and we think we know better than him. So let's understand then what hypotasso really means. What does it really mean to submit? And really what the word means is it's to willingly yield and place yourself under another. So it's not something that's forced. It's not something that's pressured upon someone else. What I think is really beautiful is in the Greek here, Paul uses the middle tense on the verb. So what does middle tense mean? Well, there's an active verb. And the active verb would be Ross hits Robin. Don't ask why. Long history. Something about Ottawa Senators last time. But anyway, so that would be the active. Ross hits Robin. Ross does the work. Active. But then there's Robin hit by Ross. That's the passive. Robin didn't do anything other than the Senators thing, but he didn't really do anything to be hit. But then there's the middle, which would be Robin hits himself. You're going to get some help for that. But nonetheless, it's something you're doing to yourself. And so what we see here in this idea that submission isn't something that I do to Joy or Joy does to me. It's what I do to myself and what she does to herself. Meaning that we willingly subject ourselves. We willingly place ourselves under someone else. And basically what it is, it's a way to love and serve one another. And so what Paul's going to go on to say in this passage essentially is wives, you're going to submit to your husbands by respecting them, by honoring them, by acknowledging the authority that God's given them as head. And guys, husbands, you're going to submit to your wives by loving them, by laying down your life the same way that Christ laid down his life for the church. And so you see these two people that aren't trying to stand above one another, but they're willing to serve each other by submitting to each other. And I think this is really important because it's redemptive. Remember what God's doing is in redemption here, he's redeeming, he's putting things back together where the fall has torn it apart. And he's starting within ourselves as individuals. We've gotten the first fruits of the Spirit. We've been restored as a person, as an individual. And now he's beginning to restore relationships. He's doing that within the church, but he's doing it within families. He's doing it within marriages. And that idea here, again, is one of mutual submission towards one another. And notice what he says in the passage here, that we're to be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. Now, please understand, that's not a threat. It's not God saying, if you don't submit to one another, I'm out to get you. That idea of the fear of God is really one of reverence and awe. It's out of respect to him. And so this idea of mutual submission that I offer to my spouse or you offer to your spouse is ultimately one where I'm trusting God. Where I'm saying, God, I trust that you know what you're doing. I trust that your wisdom and your counsel, and even though my spouse may not deserve it, you've asked me to do this. And that's my job. That's my role. And so my marching orders are to submit myself to my wife, to Joy, each and every day. It doesn't matter what she's done or not done. My job is to submit to her. And likewise, her job is to submit to me. And I realize, and really as a husband, when you recognize that, when you realize the gift that your wife, or even as a husband gives to your wife in that submission, that serving, that offering yourself to the other person, you begin to see what a beautiful gift it really is. One that we're not to take lightly, one that we're not to abuse and to neglect.